the number one problem in the world today?
It's the church.
Real. Talk. Real.
RTR, in conjunction with BEC Media, presents Real Talk Radio. The show that says just because you don't attend with them does not mean you're not in him. The him being Jesus. The show that plants seeds and waters seeds, but God gives the increase. So let's talk about it on Real Talk Radio. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk Radio, the show that says just because you don't attend with him does not mean you're not in him. The him being who?
Jesus.
Jesus? Of course, Jesus. The show where we plant seeds and water seeds, but God gives the increase. And today is Sunday, July the 2nd, 2017. Can y'all believe we're here in the middle of July almost? I mean, in July already?
Man. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Half the year gone.
Half the year already. So today on Real Talk Radio, we're going to be discussing something that we like to call colorblind believers. Does being a Christian mean that you're not supposed to see race or color? Is it a matter of sin just to acknowledge racial injustice? Is it carnal or prideful to experience an emotional reaction when racism is seen? Is it biblical proof to support answers to these questions? And that's what we're asking today. That's what we're going to talk about. Colorblind believers. So when you hear that term, colorblind believers, what do you guys think about? What do you guys hear? We'll go around the panel and open up to the guys. Rob, you can go ahead and start.
When I hear that term, colorblind believers, man, well, it's kind of something I guess we just coined for the show, but when you think about it in the context of a lot of the racial injustice, the social injustice, or to hear some people tell it perceived racial injustice that we see in the media here lately, man, you have a lot of believers that come out of all races, but and from my point of view, I happen to see a lot of African American believers supporting this. When you see a lot of the racial injustice in the media, some believers feel like it's wrong to acknowledge that there are racial injustices that are taking place, that we're supposed to be one, body in Christ, which we already know that. Don't we already know that, and that's how we operate? We have a lot of brothers, people that we call brothers and sisters of all races under Christ, but that doesn't make it wrong. And I don't want to get too far into it. It's just my initial thoughts, man. That doesn't make it wrong to acknowledge racial injustice or racism or discrimination along racial boundaries. So like I said, I don't want to delve too deep, right off the top, man. I want to let you other brothers just, chime in on this, man. So I'll pass the mic.
Drake.
It's not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. I hear this, and
right.
It makes my skin cringe every time that I hear it. It's basically a response from people that really don't want to deal with the fact that there are racial injustices that take place not only here in America, but, abroad as well. Being Christians, they would rather take a blanket statement and just say, it's all about sin. If they were to come into the knowledge of the truth of Christ, then it won't be a a sin problem anymore. The problem is that most of these people who are committing the injustices are Christians, and so so when you hear things like that, it makes me personally, it just makes me even more angry, at the fact that here it is. You're someone who's being racially discriminated against, and rather than face the problem head on, you would rather resort back to a pie-in-the-sky mentality. It's really frustrating, to hear things like that. I'm passing the mic.
All right. For me, when I hear the term colorblind believers, I often ask, what do you mean by you colorblind? You can't see that I'm a black guy? You don't know that you're a white guy? You don't see my color? You can't see that orange is orange and that apple is either red or green? You don't see that? So what exactly do you mean you colorblind? You don't see color, all you see is people. That makes zero sense to me. How can you not see that? To me, that tells me that you're lying. Because basically you just told a lie. You don't see me as a black guy. You don't see yourself as a white guy. You don't see a person as Asian. You don't see that. How can you not? Especially living in this society. That's the question I have. Jonathan.
Sir?
When you hear colorblind believers, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Liar. Self-deluded. And primarily for the reason that you said, because how can you not see color? Are you sex blind too? Do you not see I'm a man? Do you not see I'm a woman? Or not I'm a woman, you know what I mean. Do you not see that she's a woman? Or I'm a man? Do you not see age? Are you age blind too? What? I mean, I know that they trying to get that thing passed where, people are selecting X because they don't want to gender say what they are, male or female, whatever, gender neutral, whatever. But you see it, so you're not colorblind. And to hide behind the cloak of Christianity or the cloak of the Bible and say, well, God, doesn't see race, God doesn't see color. God created many different nations. He created it. Now, a better thing for you to say was you don't treat people differently. Not that you don't see the difference, because you do see the difference. Now, if you don't treat people different, and that's a whole different story. But to say you're colorblind, that you don't see color, means that you are looking at everybody as the same. So everybody's going to be like you, but everybody ain't like you. That's what I hear. And then, it galls me when you hide behind the cloak of Christianity to say that, just because God don't see color, but you don't see color. God looks at the heart. But we are living in this natural world. We live in this world where everybody sees color, and people are treated based on their color by the system, by individuals. People are treated like that. Just look at, you got the black church and the white church. What the heck is that? Why should we have that? But we do have it. You have white denominations, you got black denominations. Not that there aren't black people in white denominations or white people in black denominations, because there are. But generally speaking, you have a white church and you have a black church. But then you're going to sit up here and tell me that the church should be colorblind? That's what I got to say about it.
Right. So speaking of that, you're talking about the white church versus the black, or white church and the black church. Let's talk about that just a little bit. What is that? Where did it come from? How did it start? Where did it begin? What exactly is a black church and a white church? Because I know you have the Church of God and then the Assemblies of God. They all came from the same thing. The only difference between them is the color of their skin. So where did this, speaking of doctrine, because they teach the same doctrine. There's no difference in their doctrine. Mm-hmm. So where did this come from?
Society.
How? Explain.
Society created it. I mean, it's just America. How can you not explain it? Society, this is the society we live in. This is the country that we live in, where we are separated by race. Whether you want to believe that or not, whether you see it or you don't, and I know we all here, we all just get along. We're all one race, the human race, which is true, and race is a man-made construct, which is also true, but we're still living in a society where we're divided by that man-made construct. You can't get away from that. You can't get away from how certain races are treated differently than other races. You cannot get away from that.
Right.
And there are many people who will still sit up here and deny that this happened, but most of these people, or a lot of the white people, who are privileged to not have to deal with a lot of the stuff. So because they don't see it, because it doesn't happen to them, in their minds, it doesn't happen to everybody else, anybody else. And I'm speaking in generalities here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we may have to speak in generalities during this show. So hopefully nobody gets offended. But we have to have these hard conversations, man. You know what I mean?
And we do understand that there are some good white Christians out there. There are some good black Christians out there. It's all over the place. We do understand that. However, it doesn't take away from the fact that there are some things that, racially speaking, happens to black Christians more often than it does to white Christians. And because white Christians may not be able to see or understand that, this is why we have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And even worse than that, I don't mean to cut. Even worse than that, there are black Christians that don't see this.
Right.
Right. That's the bane of Rob's existence.
Yeah, that gets on my nerves, man.
To further prove this, now let me ask y'all: when y'all went in church and y'all went out, quote unquote, witness.
Jonathan, hold on, Jonathan. Can you speak a little louder? It's hard to hear you.
I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to say. I'm having real issues. So what if I yell like this? Is this better?
Just go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So when I was in church, and most of us was in church, and we went out, quote unquote, witnessing, why do we always go to the quote unquote hood to witness? Why didn't we go to the more affluent neighborhoods to witness? Y'all know we all got these shopping centers, out a little bit in the suburbs where there's a lot of rich white people out there, but we never went out there to witness, not once. And all the time I was in church, we never went to a quote-unquote white neighborhood to go witness. We always went to the hood to witness. Why is that? These rich people don't want to hear the word? Are you scared they're going to call the police and get you ran off?
I
mean, that's from my experience. I've never, in the church I was in 10 years I was in the church, we never went to a rich white neighborhood to witness. What's up with that?
Well, I can think of a couple reasons why. One would be, and I'm not making excuses, but one would be they're comfortable with people who look like them. That's, everybody's more comfortable talking to somebody who looks like them because you have shared experiences. So it's easy to talk to
people we can relate to.
Yeah, it's easy to talk to your people. And then again, there's the other side where you're talking about these people are in the hood, they're bad. You got that stigma going too. They need Jesus more than the other people need Jesus, which is not true because if you ain't saved, everybody needs Jesus. It ain't just the poor people that need Jesus. Rich people need Jesus too. And I would dare to say they need Jesus more than we do, more than the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So, with this colorblind stuff, because there was a guy, and I know, I'm sorry if my audio is off, but there was a guy who commented on another guy's post. Now this guy, we don't always really agree with this cat a lot. because he's still in the IC. We think he has MCD. And he was very reluctant to speak on some racial profiling that came his way. He said he was in a mall and, it was just interesting. He was in a very white, highly white populated neighborhood, and, people was looking at him and staring at him, and he felt very, very uncomfortable. And he voiced his uncomfortableness on his Facebook page, and another cat came on and told him that he needs to be born again. He said, you need to be born again. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't really know exactly what he said. You need to be born again because God doesn't see color. Now, my thing, what does that have to do with the situation that he just went through? He said God don't see color, but people do.
Right.
So we're dealing with people on a daily basis, right here, right now, in your face, when you go to work, when you go to school, when you go to church, wherever you go, dealing with people. Okay, so you're going to have to deal with this, and that's just like the arrogance to you to tell this brother that he needs to be born again. Who are you to tell somebody to be born again because they speak on some social injustice that they've seen, that they witnessed, that they've had happen to them? Who are you?
Wow. Huh.
Who are you?
So, that whole comment, that's basically the reason why we wanted to start this show, to have this show today, because we noticed that conversation on Facebook, which is where we get a lot of our material from. You guys that listen to us know this, but one of our brothers in Christ, he posted, and I guess he was kind of having he was questioning his himself when he said, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, am I wrong for feeling, this? So he was feeling some kind of way about the Philando Castile verdict. I guess he was feeling anger that the officer got off like they did.
Like they
so
always.
So then this other guy came in, just like my man say, we don't agree with this cat in a lot of ways, but he came in, he was like, you need to be born again. And this sentiment is echoed a lot from believers of all races, but I find it very prevalent in a lot of, and I don't know which is worse, but I find it prevalent in a lot of African American believers. When there's obvious racial and social injustice, they are very reluctant to even comment on it. But if they do comment on it, it's in really religious terms like that. Like he just jumped out there on our friend's post talking about, brother, you need to be born again. So he questioned this guy's very salvation just because he had an emotional reaction to the officer getting off on the Philando Castile situation.
Now,
so he questioned his very salvation with that
now,
comment.
Was the brother?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Was the brother already saved?
Yeah. This brother is sold out for Christ, man. This brother's saved, man. You know what I mean? So,
wow.
Yeah, that's what we said. We were like, wow, you just gonna jump out there like that and question this man? Tell him he needs to be born again. Where does this come from? Somebody listening, if you're listening and you have some biblical support for this, where does that come from? That we can't feel any type of emotion to any racial injustice that's seen, or you might say perceived racial injustice, whatever you want to call it, that's seen in society today.
It goes back to what you said, or what Dre said. It's a sin problem, not a skin problem.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. I get it all the time. And here's the thing, though. Because of you have a lot of Christians who refuse to acknowledge that there's racism or white supremacy that's happening within this country, and they refuse to talk about it. So then this is how you get a lot of believers pulled out of church into a lot of these pro-black theological societies. So you talk about not even that, but just pro-black groups, these Pan-African groups. You get people come pulled into the conscious community, the Hoteps. You get people pulled into the Hebrew Israelites who will acknowledge the black man and his plight and all this stuff. Some even go into the Nation of Islam because the church won't talk about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so because of the lack of acknowledgement, because you ain't supposed to talk about it because they're going to make them feel more uncomfortable. You're afraid of what your white counterparts may think or say about you. And then, again, you're trying to hide behind God. You're trying to hide behind Jesus. You know, you put it on there. It's a sin problem, not a skin problem, or however they put it. But you cannot get away from the fact that we live in a society that is a white supremacist-led society. That is a racist society. Systemic problems. Mm-hmm. It's not because somebody called you a nigger. That ain't what the problem is. That's individual act. You got all these microaggressions that we have to deal with every day.
Yeah.
That the vast majority of Americans don't have to deal with. But we have to deal, and we're supposed to just internalize it and turn it off. We've been doing that for centuries. Going along to get along. And a lot of people in the reform camp, not all, but a lot of people in the reform camp have this mindset, you know. Well, if we would have just did what the police said, he would have just did this, he would have been okay. That's not cool. You have a lot.
And you see
people like that.
You see that coming from the mostly the white evangelical, even some blacks that follow those real closely. I was listening to an interview with Propaganda. I'm not sure if y'all know who he is. He's a rapper, and he talked about that when he was in conversations with his white evangelical friends, talking about Spurgeon and talking about all these, talking about doctrine. Everything's cool, but then when he talk about race, he was like, "What? You just now figuring out I'm black? I was black the whole time we was talking. So we can't talk about this. Now I'm an enemy." And then even, I don't know if you guys remember, we coming up on the 4th of July here. The last 4th of July, I don't know, it was 2016. Yeah, that was last year. Lecrae posted a picture and said, "My family on 4th of July, 1776. And it had some slaves in the field picking cotton. And a lot of the people who really supported Lecrae come from the white evangelical and the reform camp. And they went hard at Lecrae talking about race. Why is that?
Because a lot of white people are really uncomfortable with talking about race. They feel
and why
that,
is that? Oh, go ahead.
Like for instance, they feel that being called a racist is the equivalent of being called a nigger.
No, it's worse than that to them.
You understand what I'm saying? They have to understand that, it is what it is. Straight up, The problem with a lot now this is just white people. You understand what I'm saying? And again, I have no problems with white people at all. You understand what I'm saying? However, when it comes down to social justice and equality and things of that nature, when it comes down to that, there are certain things that are not seen at all. You understand what I'm saying? Whether you're Christian or not. However, when you're a black Christian and you hold these same views, okay, I don't see color. If Philando Castile had just not reached for whatever he was reaching for, he wouldn't have been shot. No. How about let's stop the perception that all black men are dangerous, especially when the statistics don't support it, okay? And let's just treat everyone equally, on the police force, as far as that particular thing is concerned, okay? And just start having these discussions, start learning things, start checking out the statistics about certain things that take place. Maybe then we'll have some resolution. Maybe then we'll have some solutions that will come our way. But until then, these are the type of conversations that we're going to have.
Right. Exactly.
So apparently my microphone is so bad that it's made John hearing blind. He said he can't even hear me. He's a hearing blind believer today. So I got to switch.
I ain't talking about that, man.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about what Rob said, and you hollering at me behind the scenes.
My bad. Margie, what you got to say? How you feel?
How you doing, Marge?
Justice.
Hey, I think that I just echo everything people just said. And Andre had a good point. But it seems like people that have these, colorblind responses are actually just really afraid of offending their white counterparts. And so they're on guard all the time. They got to be the colorblind police, even if it's unsolicited, they have to be the colorblind police. So, here's a mutual friend saying, hey, I'm upset about this latest case, Philando Castile, and as a matter of fact, these are some of my observations with racism and, citing really real experiences about being maybe the lone black wolf in a sea of a white environment or a white climate, whether in the mall or in a movie theater or whatever, and just some real things that happen and causing him to, really reflect on the loudness of his blackness in an environment like that. And here this guy goes, the colorblind police, Well, like you guys said in the beginning, the guy really even questioned this man's salvation because he brought up being black and that, we have to be careful that it's not a pride issue, that black skin is a pride issue or something along those lines. It was so offensive. It was so offensive that I just had to ask him. It was so offensive it didn't make sense because there were white people that were genuinely hurt about the Philando Castile situation. I don't know if they're saved or not, but I know there are white people that really had genuine questions and questioning America and questioning, well, geez, and he didn't have a response for that. He didn't have a response for that at all. And, that's what I called him out on. That's craziness.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as soon as Marjorie got on there and started questioning him, he switched the goalpost up, man. He switched up the whole narrative. This guy that, went on the attack. And as soon as Marjorie asked a very legit question, very, very sensible, very legit question, this guy really switched up and kind of, became really insulting. And it's funny because I happen to know, just like you were saying, I know that there's white people that felt some kind of way about the Philando Castile situation. And it seems like people like this guy that attacked our mutual Facebook friend and attacked you for questioning him, somewhere along the line, these quote-unquote colorblind people, these colorblind police people, have white people in their camp that they're trying to impress. That's what it seems like to me. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere along the line, that's, you know, they got somebody white that they're looking for approval from, and it's, I mean, that's totally unnecessary. But see, white people have to understand that. I mean, we're not, when we speak out against these injustices, we're not saying that we're anti-white. You know what I mean? We're anti-white supremacy, but we're not anti-white. I mean, you know, we have to have these hard conversations and make these hard comments, because we're never going to get anywhere if we don't really confront this stuff.
Right.
So, and what John was alluding to earlier, yeah, that really gets on my nerves. I hate it when these black people make these kind of stances and they're only looking for white approval. So, I mean,
they'll deny that.
Because he got quite a few likes. He got quite a few likes on his comment about being born again and black pride and stuff.
And see, another thing is we have to not confuse. I'm gonna just go ahead and say my man's name. We can't confuse Eric's stance on, you know, when he questioned, you know, I'm a black man and I feel like this verdict was wrong, and I'm just feeling some type of way in this social racial climate in this country right now. You know, when people like, you know, Eric make statements like that, I mean, I kind of completely just lost my train of thought. But we have to we can't confuse here. This is what I wanted to say. We can't confuse when people like Eric make those kind of statements and ask those kind of questions. We can't confuse that with the Hoteps and with the BHI, with the the extremist Pan-African people, because that's what I think this guy that attacked Eric, I think that's where he was coming from. That he automatically associates that with being, you know, one of those people, and that's not the case. That doesn't mean that you're extremely, you know, prideful and all this type of stuff. That doesn't mean that. So there are, you know, variables in here that we have to consider. It's just not, Eric's just turning into a Hotep or something like that. No. But he has a right to feel some kind of way as a black man in this country that sees racial injustice. He has a right to feel the way he felt. We have to let people, we have to let people emote when these things, you know, happen. And I'm all for, listen, y'all, I'm all for having the facts up front and waiting until the facts come out. I'm all for that. I'm all for logic. Y'all know I'm a very logical person. But this is something that I had to learn. In my, you know, logical fact-finding self, I had to learn that you have to let people emote. You got to. I'm not talking about going out and throwing bricks in plate glass windows and rioting. No, I'm not talking about that. No, but you got to let people feel. You have to. And I had to learn that myself. I'm off my soapbox.
I think a big issue, is this a little better? Is this any better?
Yes, sir. It's 10 times better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right then. All right. Now leave me alone. I think the pride has a lot to do with how people look at it. Like if you stand up and say, I'm a black man and I stand for X, Y, Z, you have a lot of people look at that as you're being prideful and you're standing up for being black. And it's not even about being prideful. Or you're being prideful. And I think that is at the heart of a lot of the disdain for black Christians standing up and saying, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm also a black man. We can't get away from it.
But you know,
we can't get away from it.
Yeah, but you know what I find funny? I find funny that it's okay to be prideful to be a Christian, or be prideful of being, being someone from Israel, but you can't be proud being a Christian of being black.
Proud to be Italian. It's hypocrisy. It's a double standard. And you was absolutely right on. And I never even thought about that. Like, it's okay to be proud to be a Christian and stand up for the things of God. I'm a fool for Christ. But the moment you stand up and be proud of being a black man, can somebody stop? Who's that moaning?
That's me.
Can you stop moaning, please?
Wow.
You know, you're proud. It's okay to be a proud moaner, but moan on mute.
Go finish your point.
That's why we can't be friends.
Oh
okay.
my God.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all know I'm just messing with Miss Chad. So it's okay to be proud to be a Christian, but the moment you stand up and say, I'm a black man and I'm a Christian, or I'm a Christian and I'm a black man, you know, people take offense to that for some reason. I think it's just a narrative that, again, black men are dangerous.
No,
yes,
let me tell you
black
what
man and I'm a
happened.
Christian. What is it? Tell me.
I'm saying, so it's because if you could be proud of your Christianity, but if you stand up and say, I'm a proud black Christian man, that's not the normal. That's not the norm. You're creating division. You're separating yourself from us. You're causing a division. Why can't you just be a proud Christian? Because we are not the norm. Okay? That's where it comes from. You're different. You know what I mean? That's where it comes from.
But that's what this whole discussion is about. Being different and the fact that it's okay to be different. There's nothing wrong with being black. There's nothing wrong with being white. And there's nothing wrong with having pride in your heritage either. Okay? The problem is that there are just some people that can't handle it. Marjorie came up with the perfect statement behind that. You know, we have people pleasers, and we're trying to please people. You understand what I'm saying? But why? You know, if I have a problem in my particular community, I was just watching this video about Jay-Z, and he was talking about he was talking about the war on drugs back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Okay, but it stems from a problem that was in my community. You understand what I'm saying? So if I have a problem in my community, and my community is different from your community, why can't I voice that and still be, and why can't I voice that and not still be a good Christian in standing?
It makes white people uncomfortable because some of them feel quote unquote guilty.
Uncomfortable? Why did it make him uncomfortable? Is what I'm. Why did it make that particular guy uncomfortable? He's not white.
On the outside.
Well, it goes
and
again.
It wasn't directed towards him.
Well, I think, you know, I don't think I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but it goes back to somewhere he's got some white people in his camp that he's trying to impress, and he's looking for approval from. You know, they're hoping that they see his comment on this thread and go follow the thread and read the comments and get the context of what's going on and go, oh, good job. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great job. Because ultimately talking about race and stuff from a black perspective makes white people uncomfortable. So somewhere along the line, he's got somebody white on his Facebook, in his friends list or whatever, that he's trying to impress, on top of the fact that this cat is one of those completely over-religious believers that sends people to hell for walking on the cracks on the sidewalk. He's one of those type of people. So there's that too.
And you know, I was just this whole conversation got me thinking about a situation that took place about maybe a year or two or so ago, where there was a Trump rally, and there was a black man at a Trump rally, and he was protesting. And there was a white man who was at that same protest that dude in the jaw. You understand what I'm saying? Trust me, the whole climate of that particular rally, as with all Trump rallies, were crazy, political and racial. Okay, so this white man hit the black dude, right? Gets on camera and says he better be lucky. That's all I did. That's all I did to him. Okay, the same man was caught. He was sentenced to, I believe it was a misdemeanor, whatever the case may be. But he was sentenced and convicted, right? It was small, all right? Black dude that it happened to walks up to this man and shakes his hand and says, you know, they're both saying, we got to do better. You know, it was the climate and blah, blah, blah. Black dude is like, you know, I accept your apology and whatnot. Now, here's my thing. I don't have a problem with the black dudes accepting the apology. What I have a problem with is that it seems as if black people do this all the time. Whenever there is a problem, okay, we want to kumbaya. We want to try to do everything that we possibly can to make it comfortable for everyone else, especially for those that have committed the crimes against us. Whenever there's a cop that was acquitted against someone who was a black man who was shot unarmed, a black woman who was killed in jail, or whatever the case may be, there was always the parents that get on air, start talking about, you know, it's okay because the Lord has a plan for the situation. We already know what's going to happen. The Lord is going to see it our way. And I'm like, why aren't you fighting? Is there someone that you is there somebody or something that you're afraid of that is going to cause you harm if you continue the fight? These are the type of people that these are the type of black people that we're dealing with on these types of posts as well.
We got a caller, y'all. We got a caller.
Get it.
Caller from the 314. 314, you're live on Real Talk Radio. What's your thoughts about colorblind believers?
He said that when the train was coming.
Hey, this is J-Mac, man. You know I'm not missing this conversation.
What's going on, man?
What up?
Hey, look here. I'm gonna start like this. Why is it a problem with you being a black Christian? And it was never a problem with Paul being a Jewish Christian convert. It was never a problem with Peter or anybody else, or even today. If you have any Jewish brothers that convert over to Christianity, they're called Jewish Christians, or they're known as I can't remember this guy.
Messianic Jews.
So what's the difference? The difference is because I said that I'm black. You don't have a problem with people saying they're Jewish, but you say you have a problem with me saying that I'm black. And Paul was definitely concerned about his Jewish brethren coming over to the faith. He was concerned about Israel. I mean, he was commissioned to go and preach to the Gentiles, but he didn't forget about Jews. So are we supposed to forget about black folks? Are we supposed to forget about our community too? Are we supposed to not care about the injustice? And my bigger question is, why would our white brothers not care? And I'm not saying all our white brothers, because some of our white brothers care, obviously. But why would our white brothers not care? Why would they make blanket statements and say, oh, well, he should have did this, or, do that, do this, and blah, blah, blah? I don't understand that to a point, other than to say that many of our white brothers are still plagued by the sin of white supremacy and white privilege. I'm just keep it real. Many of them are plagued by that. They don't see it. They don't see it as sin, but they need to come to a kumbaya with Jesus on that issue, because you cannot continue to turn a blind eye to injustice for your brother or community in the same country you live in, and people are being shot down by police unarmed. That makes no sense. You can't justify that. There's no say, oh, well, if he'd have just kept his mouth shut, If Eric Garner would have just put his arms down, maybe he wouldn't have been choked out. Are you crazy? What kind of message? These are the kind of responses I get. I'm just getting it off my chest. I've had
even in that.
Yeah.
You think about this article that just came out not too long ago about the Southern Baptist Convention when they had an issue and a big fight over condemning white supremacy.
Exactly.
They had an issue with condemning it, and they did not want to do it.
Why would you have a problem with the outright?
Earth? Hey, that's the issue, man. That they don't want to do it because they don't see it as a problem. And that's the problem. And whenever you bring this stuff up, they say you're the one causing division. I'm telling you, when you try to talk about the racial tensions and the racial issues, white supremacy, white privilege, you talk about any of that stuff, they, like John said, they make you the racist. They make you the issue. They say you're the one causing division. To even acknowledge it and talk about it, they'll say, well, we know racism exists, and then they'll leave it at that. But no, you have to talk about this. It ain't gonna ever go away. Anybody on here think that racism and white supremacy is gonna ever go away? Raise your hand. I don't see no hands. I can't see y'all anyway, but the point still made. But it ain't gonna go away. Go ahead.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that kills. I expect that from most white people. You understand what I'm saying?
Unbelievers.
It's our brothers and sisters that are doing it, though.
No, yeah,
that's where I have the problem.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's our own people that's doing this.
Yeah, J-Mac, man, we want to thank you for calling in, brother. We got some more callers on. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. I was just going to say to wind this up. I've had conversations. I've had conversations with some of my white brothers, and some of them have come around to see because they were plagued by it. This one brother, he admitted, he said, "Hey, I just didn't know. I didn't see. I was raised to believe that the police were, Andy Griffin and Barney, what I'm talking about, Sheriff Andy Griffin. I mean, I was raised to believe that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so I had having conversations. He said, and having conversations with me helped him to see see it from another perspective, to understand from another perspective. But then there are other guys on my job, and I really don't talk about politics on my job, but these guys, I let them drag me into it, and this was when Trayvon got killed, and the guy goes, yeah, well, if somebody was walking through my neighborhood, I'd have confronted them too. I just told him, I said, hey, if you shoot my son, I'm coming and I'm chopping your head off. I'm letting you know now. So you better be careful whose son you kill. Anyway, I better cut it off. That's about all I got for today.
All right. Appreciate you, Jay. As always.
All right.
My dude,
Caller from 631. You're live on Real Talk Radio. What's your name and your comment about colorblind believers?
Hey, what's going on? My name is Kevin from New York. How you guys
doing? Kev? What's going on, Big King?
All right. Doing good, man. Well, look, I'm from the city. I came from Brooklyn, so I see it all. I mean, it doesn't mean that nobody else does. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to deny that, but I've been around people. I've been around black folk, which has been very frustrating. But I've been around some black folk who think that we should all be like colorblind, and they're trying to submit to whatever white people are saying. And the problem is that one of the problems I notice is that their identity, they're believing that just because they're black, that they shouldn't take pride in it. And they're saying, well, God doesn't see color. Well, that's a lie, because if God didn't see color, then why did He make us in different race? Like, God sees color, but color is beautiful. I mean, didn't He make the sky blue? Didn't He make the trees green? I mean, you know what I mean? Did He make the grass green? Didn't He make the sun yellow and orange and whatever color? So color is beautiful just in nature by itself, and God made us in different colors for a specific reason. There's a part where there's a scripture I always remember where He says, I'm not sure which prophet He said it to. He said, before before you even born. He said, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. In other words, he's saying, Jeremiah. I already identified who you. Yeah, Jeremiah, thank you. I already know who you are before I even appointed you to what race you need to be in. So when God already knows who we already are, and then He appointed us to what race we should be under, and that in itself should be an honor. That's why I should be pride. That's why I take pride in. I take pride, and it's an honor that God made me a black man. So whatever race that you're in, it doesn't matter if you're Italian or Hispanic or whatever, you should absolutely take pride in whatever race that God has given you, because that was his appointed time for you. So for you to deny your race, to submit to and be scared of white people, the problem is that you're making people bigger and you're making God smaller. That's the problem I have. That's the problem with some black people that think, they only think about, there's something wrong with me, or this, or like you said, that gentleman said earlier, well, you need to be saved. No, it's not that he needs to be saved. It's the fact that he needs to see that brother that said, well, he needs to be saved. That's the brother that needs to see the injustice, because God sees injustice too.
Right.
But He lets us know what's injustice. He lays it out in Scripture. And first of all, you don't even have to read the Bible to see what's injustice. You know what I mean? You already see that. But as a Christian, God shows us what's injustice. He shows us what's right and what's wrong. And He shows us there's nothing wrong talking about it, being about it. There's nothing wrong. And nowhere in Scripture where God even condemns that we shouldn't approach racism, that we shouldn't talk about that. There's nowhere in Scripture that he tells us to not talk about it and to be silent about it. Jesus wasn't silent about it. You saw what He did. He threw tables and all this other stuff. This guy went on a rampage because of injustice. So why is it that we have to be silent about what we do, but it's okay for others to go to war and doing all this other stuff? Because there was so much injustice in the Bible in of itself. So for us, yes, we're not supposed to be taking vengeance, quote unquote vengeance. Yes, I understand that, but that doesn't negate the fact that we shouldn't talk about it. That doesn't negate the fact that we should, that doesn't mean that. Now listen, we shouldn't be doing like all those crazy riots, and we shouldn't be going around and start saying black power against white people. We're not against white people. We're just against the mindset of thinking that your race is more superior than another. Just because I'm black and I'm proud of being black doesn't make me saying that I'm better than a white person or better than a Hispanic person. There's nothing wrong with I'm glad. You know what I mean? You're Hispanic. We understand. Prideful about your own culture. There's nothing. I love listening and studying other people's cultures. But when it comes to our culture, it's like, why are you against our? What's the problem? Like, you know what I mean? There should be no problem against any other culture. You should know more about other people's cultures. But that's what white people aren't. Well, not all white. Let me clarify. Not all white, but they should understand and know where we're coming from and understand what's going on, in our lives as black people. But that's all I really wanted to say.
It's all good. Hey, Kev, I got a quick question. What part of Brooklyn you from?
Go ahead. Star City.
I'm from Canarsie.
All right.
All right, why don't y'all kiss then? Make up.
Yeah, y'all do all that New York stuff off the air. y'all inbox each other with all that New York stuff. Get out of here.
All right, man. Good talking to you,
appreciate you, Kev.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you.
You made some great points, man.
All right, we got the phone lines lit up right now.
Yep. Next caller,
678
from the 678. We know who this is.
The general in the building.
What's up? Is it me?
What's up,
What's up?
Yes, sir.
What's happening to everybody?
What's up, bro?
Right, what's going on, black man?
Hey, why I gotta be a black man?
Hey.
I'm an African. I ain't no black man.
Hotel.
Just because you went over to Senegal don't mean nothing. I mean,
hey,
just got back from Senegal, right?
Yeah, about a month ago. A very, very interesting trip, by the way.
All right.
So I'm enjoying the program. I just wanted to say, I guess, first of all, I already hit you up on chat when we was talking about that Kumbaya. That was like, that's one of the things that I hate. I really hate that many black people do when there's a conflict. Especially a lot of black Christians do this rather than really dealing with a situation the way it should be dealt with. And I'm not necessarily talking about, arguing or cussing folks out or even, or violence, but, dealing with a situation in truth. Many black Christians are so quick to have a kumbaya moment and just, and I think that's very, I think it's dangerous. For a lot of reasons I won't get into, but what I wanted to say that, that what we're dealing with when we talk about race is we're dealing with some deep psychological conditioning that white people don't think that they have been affected by. This conditioning has affected, especially in America. Everybody has been affected by this conditioning, and racism, white supremacy, first and foremost, is a psychological assault. So in other words, people have to convince themselves in their own mind that they are superior or that they have a right to exercise dominance over other people, and then they have to convince these other groups of people that they are inferior, or that something bad will happen to them if they do not go along with what this so-called superior group says. So that's why. So a lot of white people are confused. They say, "Well, slavery is over." They say, "Well, Jim Crow is over. Nobody's lynching anybody anymore. Nobody's wearing hoods." Well, see, that's the old racism that they're talking about. It's not even really old. But I'm just saying that for lack of a better term. But the true power of racism, the psychological conditioning, is still here, and it shows up when we look in these situations that happen in the news. Like these ideas that a white person is automatically believed over a black person. That still exists. When this notion that when black people assert themselves, when they assert their rights, or when they speak up for themselves, they're perceived as being dangerous. Taking Black Lives Matter for example. Not that I agree with the larger. There's the Black Lives Matter organization, then there's the larger Black Lives Matter movement. There's a distinction between the organization itself and the larger movement. I ain't got time. I don't want to take up time going into all of that, but people standing up simply saying in the wake of how Trayvon Martin was treated by the media and the justice system, saying, listen, we don't like this. Something's got to be done about this. This was perceived, even we can go back to Martin Luther King. All of this idea, this notion that black people don't have a history. Now they put up monuments and talk about their history all the time. They're talking about George Washington and all this other stuff. But if black people refer to anything in their history what happened in the historical record is perceived as being, well, that's the past. So there are a lot of things psychologically that still continue. Even the way when we look at how black people are treated by police and so on and so on. So it's hard for white people to understand this because again they have not had to think about these types of things in their existence, in their history. But it's something that even though a lot of us have not personally lived specifically, we have family members that have lived it, and they pass on these lessons, which is psychological again. That and it all is basically just to be careful of white people. No matter how Black Power we sound and we talking, there's still in the back of our minds something has been passed on to us. Even when we get saved, there's still the society says to us that white people we need to watch out for them. And so this is what we're left with when we talk about race. The psychological piece is not something you can point out per se, but you can point it out, but if you don't have a mind to understand it, or if you don't have any reference, to that, then so I think that's what we're dealing with, and so but that's what I wanted to share.
Okay, Kev, you can hang out with us the rest of the show. I'm going to call us. We see you 757-312. We're going to come to you next. I'm going to talk about the psychological aspect just for real quick before we take these next callers. So we all have seen pictures of lynchings, right? Pretty sure everybody's seen the picture of lynchings. So
yes,
if you look closely at a picture of a lynching, you see all these white people in there, right? So think about that little white girl that's in there watching this lynching with a smile on her face. That's psychological damage that's being done to her because she doesn't see that black man is being lynched as a human. So psychologically, she's being changed. She don't see him as a human. And along with mindset
along with that,
up with, go ahead.
So along with that, what I've always wondered is what happened to that little girl in the picture smiling. And when she had a family, what did she teach her children? And where are they now? Right. And what are they doing? That's all psychological.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that was
your humanity.
Of the fact that she's in the picture smiling, and during that event, it's a result of that particular little girl's cultural conditioning. She grew up in that. She came up in that. She was born into it. So she was past those. She was past those type of. I don't even we can't even call them lessons. But kind of to your point, Kev, we can't call that lessons. But she was passed down that type of mindset, that type of mentality. That's why she's in the picture smiling. So, but
so we're the top even if you didn't grow up in that conditioning, the media, film, the legal system. There are different things in the American culture, and that still pass these concepts on. So even though you didn't grow up in Mississippi with no missing front teeth, there's people in New York or in Connecticut that still somehow acquired these ideas about themselves and about black people that came from somewhere.
Yeah, and it's your average everyday white person who you go to work with every day. That's who you see in those pictures of lynchings. Average everyday white people.
And the church is right up in the middle of it, but we're not. But we're not going there right now.
Hey, pause for a second. So, I know we're about to we're about to get to some more callers, but you're listening to Real Talk Radio. We're at the top of the hour. This is Real Talk Radio. And we're broadcasting in conjunction with BEC Media. This morning we're talking about colorblind believers. So that's where we are. Don, go ahead with the callers, homie.
Call in.
All right, callers, 757-312. We're coming to you right after this caller, 757. You are live on Real Talk Radio. What's your name and your comment about colorblind believers?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? This is Roger. How y'all doing?
Hey, what's going on, Brother Rod?
What's up, Rod?
Hey, doing fine, man. Doing fine. Hey, been listening to your show, man. But check this out. I don't know if people ever took the notice of this with the Philando Castile shooting. Why is it that when a white person gets shot, check this out now, that the NRA, the ones who support conceal and carry for citizen and gun rights, has not came out and spoken up for this dude? If you don't see, you tell me that's not colorblindness. The NRA has not came out and spoke up at all for this dude. At all.
You know what, man? Okay. I'm kind of on the other side of the argument with that, because the NRA, I'm not sure that they have to come out and make a huge statement about it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you research the history of the NRA, they have been very active in helping black people and black organizations with their gun rights. So I'm not sure that they needed to really just come out and say, oh, we're against this, that, and the third. Maybe they should have. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they could have. Maybe they should have. I'm not holding them completely blameless. But I mean, if you go through our history, man, they like, if you look at the Deacons for Defense, does everybody know who the Deacons for Defense were?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. The NRA actually helped them upgrade their weapons, and they sold them ammo in bulk during their conflict with the KKK. And if you look at recent history, there was Shaneen Allen, young black woman. She was a mother of two. She was a licensed concealed carry holder in Pennsylvania. She got stopped for a traffic violation in New Jersey, who has some of the most archaic gun laws in the country. She got stopped for a traffic violation. She lawfully revealed that she was a concealed carry holder. As a result of her being in New Jersey with those archaic gun laws, she was arrested, put in jail for a couple months, if I'm not mistaken. The NRA actually helped her with her legal fees until Governor Christie pardoned her. And there's a black man now, Coleon Noir. He's actually a NRA spokesman with his own show. So not sure that, like I said, I'm not completely holding them blameless. So, to your point, but not sure that they really had to come out and make a grandiose statement about this. So I'm kind of on the other side of that. You guys may disagree, and I'm cool with that. So I'll listen to your points now.
Okay, but I really appreciate the info, though, the education on that. Really appreciate that. And I'm gonna give you something based on my experience when I was in the military. I went to this store, and this owner in there, of course, he was white, and he had a replica of an Uzi in there. Check this out now. He picked up that and showed me. He said, "You ever seen one of these?" I said, "I know what it is." He said, "Oh, I thought you might have seen one of these in your neighborhood." I'm for real. I said, "What does that mean?" I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Oh," I said, "Why would you refer that type of weapon to my neighborhood?" Of course, his face turned all red. I said, "You know what, man? I'm just gonna get out your store before I end up doing something that I'm going to regret." But anyway, man, I love y'all guys' show, man. Let's go ahead.
I was gonna say, Roger, if it did get in the neighborhood, how did it get there? We don't manufacture Uzis. How did it get there? Who gave it to us?
This was in Tennessee.
Okay.
Right. All right, fellas.
All right now.
All right, Ron.
Now this NRA thing, I could go in on that, but I'm gonna let the caller speak, so I'll save that for later.
Me too, because I want to chime in on that too. But this ain't
I got a bunch of
the
stuff I want to talk about too.
This ain't the gun show. We are here to talk about believers, colorblind believers. Area code 312. You are live on Real Talk Radio. What's your name and your comment?
Hello, y'all. My name is Eric. I am over here in Iowa. Missed y'all a lot because apparently you guys moved over to a new number and I didn't know. I was like, oh, no. But anyway, over that. Okay, so colorblindness. Colorblindness is equal to gaslighting. And for the ones that don't know what gaslighting is, Gaslighting is a manipulation of one's sanity to believe that what happened did not actually happen, and what happened is what the other person who's manipulating the other person is. So if you walked outside and a car hit another car, the manipulator says, no, that didn't happen. What do you mean it didn't happen? I saw it. No, it didn't happen. What happened really was an elephant stepped on the car, so that's how the car got crushed, and the person believes it. I know that's really extreme or whatever, but that's what gaslighting is. It's a manipulation of one's sanity. Go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to say something. So that's what it is, gaslighting. And you can also see colorblindness is a willingness to ignore the issues that negatively affect the black community. Having a blind eye to what's clearly disrespectful or microaggressions, okay, that's, like I said, it's equal to gaslighting. So that's what my definition of colorblindness is when someone says that. So if you're going to be colorblind to the fact that I'm black, and when I want to speak about what's happening within my culture or how I feel as a black individual, then you're going to ignore that. You're going to lessen the issue because, whites, now for the white people that are listening, this is no absolute, you know what I mean? Not all white people are like this, but whites tend to rewrite our narrative, rewrite our emotions, or rewrite history for us to say, oh, no, that's not what really happened. So that's what, to me, colorblindness is. Moving on to the next thing, the Southern Baptist Convention, I'm not going to lie, when I heard about that, I literally told God, I said, with some curse words, I said, never, even though I'm not even in the Baptist Convention, I said, I'm going to call my old church and tell them that if they're sending money there, they need to stop. Moving on. All black people just, sending money to the Black Southern Convention, stop doing it because that shows right there they're not for you. Okay, moving on. Okay, so you guys were saying something about black pride. You all know the statement, black is beautiful. There's nothing wrong with a black individual having black pride, okay? But what we have to remember is this. Black is beautiful. That statement right there, that is an affirmation. That is a remembrance, and it is a wake-up call. It is an affirmation to let you know that you need to have proper self-esteem about you being black, your dark skin, your light skin, your in-between skin. Okay, not only that, but just remembering that you are just as good as any other race. Just because you're dark or in between or you're black, all of those negative stereotypes that has come upon us, that's not you. You need to have proper self-esteem. Remembering your freed African ancestors that were kidnapped into slavery. Remembering all of that and all of the systematic ways of how they broke those people down, which is lasting today, not only so you won't repeat the history of that, and not only just remembering, but now wanting to get to know your heritage, okay? And so far as the wake-up call, is a wake-up call to let you know that, wait, my people are being not treated right. It's an injustice pretty much every time. We have a lot of wins, but there's still that injustice. It's still that contempt or subtle contempt that we have against us. So waking up to that and now saying, what can I do for my community? How can I help Shaniqua down the street who has 3 kids, and yet she's on welfare and people are talking about her and ragging her, calling her all type of whores or whatever, but how can I help her and everybody else that is in my community? Also, I just want this is my last thing right here. We need to read the book by Dr. Joy DeGruy called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. The book is awesome. It talks about I'm going to read right here, America's, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. Continue. It talks about America's about America's legacy of enduring injury and healing. And I literally had tears going down my face just reading the first chapter, because she talks about how why blacks do certain things and we don't know why we do it. For instance, she began to say, like today, our ancestors, they endured the trauma, the slavery, the rapes of men and women, being called vicious names and things of that nature, and they never got any therapy for that. So now when they had children, they put all of that anger and things that went down upon us because they couldn't take that anger out back on the slave masters back then, the kidnappers and the abusers. So it went down to us in a way, okay? But they still loved us. But, as blacks, I know I grew up with my aunties and uncles or whatever, and they were really tough on being clean. They were really tough on education and things of that nature. And so they would literally, get angry and things of that nature. But that comes from out of back then. I'm going a little bit off the topic. But however, she began to explain why we act the way we act. For instance, we've all been in white areas, and we've seen some white kids or white teenagers that kind of like, doing kid things. And, we're looking around like, okay, we're in a white area. I don't want them to be misperceived. So you look at them and you kind of like point your finger, something like get back in line or behave yourself, and they will do it or somewhat do it. Well, she says that comes out of slavery because we didn't want the black kids and being tortured and killed and hung and strung up on trees. So that's why we have this community thing of when we're in a white area, we look out for our black kids so they won't get in trouble with the white people. And that just blew my mind because how many times have I been in a line somewhere and I wanted to get out of line and I saw some black woman. There's always a black woman, and I turned around and she looked at me and I got back in line because my mama didn't see me about to get out of line and misbehave. But anyway, so we need to read that book, and you can go on I don't take a long time, you can go on YouTube and look up Dr. Joy DeGruy, her last name DeGruy, and she has hour-long and 2-hour-long on this book, and I promise you, you will love it. I'm so sorry. Can I just say this one last thing?
I got a
guy
question
who
for you.
Go ahead.
No, I mean after your point, I got a question.
Okay. I have somewhat of an answer to why you said the guy may have felt uncomfortable. The reason, in my opinion, the reason why he feels uncomfortable is because the desire to fit in. Blacks, as a whole, desires to fit in with the superior, what we deem the superior race, which is white. So when you try to fit in with the group, the mindset is now not my issues in particular, it's the group issues. And so when you blend your issues with the group issues, everything get kind of, meshed together and muddled together. But when it comes to blacks, our issues are either last on the agenda or never attended to, or some portion of that issue is rectified, but not 100%. So I believe he feels uncomfortable because when you pull back the layers on black people, you pull back the layers on white people. And white people do not want to know all of the jacked up mess that has been done because it messes with their cognitive dissonance. I'm done.
Brother, before you go, one last question. Okay,
yeah.
Where do we send the tithe check to?
You send that tithe check to your auntie who needs the bill to be paid. You send that tithe check to your nephew who's in college that needs some books, and you send your tithe check to your car note and your rent. Hello. Your business. Reinvest in your business. Your mutual fund.
All right, now.
I've been listening to y'all. There we go.
All right, I got a serious question, Eric. So you live in Iowa.
Yes.
Now, there's not a large percentage of black people in Iowa. Is there, like where you live, are you in the city or in the suburbs? How is your interaction among white people and among white and black Christians, so-called? So, because I don't really know the population of black people in Iowa, but I would assume it's not that great. So what is your reaction to living in Iowa? And how long have you been, that kind of stuff?
I've been living in Iowa for like a total of 7 years, and Iowa, it is a predominantly white area. Des Moines, Iowa, has a large percentage of blacks. Now, when I first came to Iowa, it was a culture shock because I've never been around so many white people. And I work with individuals with mental disorders and things of that nature. My stepmother has a very successful business out here that she opened, and she had me to come to be employed with her. But however, it's a culture shock because I never seen poor white people. I never seen white people with mental disorders. I never seen white people on welfare. I never seen white people living in what's equal to ghettos. I've never seen white people with all of these kids and not taking care of them. I've never seen white people who have messed up teeth and jacked up hair. I've seen all of that in the black community. You know what I mean? And that's no shock to the black community. I've never seen that in the white community. Now, this is where the propaganda comes in. I did see that on a very small level when I was back in Indiana. I saw it on a very small level. I saw it on a very small level when I was in Illinois. But propaganda told me, and I ate it all, okay, to ignore the issues that and the problems that you see, ignore the imagery that you see when it comes to white. Because the imagery on television and in the movies were rich white individuals, or they're middle class, or they're poor, but they work themselves up to the point of having money, having success. That's what you pay attention to. So when I came to Iowa, and this is the same thing white people do to black people. All the information comes from TV and YouTube and gangster videos, so that's how they perceive us. So, I didn't realize I was doing the same thing. And I came to Iowa. I said, oh, snap, wait a second. They're good and bad just like us. So what's the problem? But so far as my interaction with them, I have not had a bad interaction. I have not had a bad I haven't been to church in a very long time. I've only been to church one time out here. So when it comes to Christians, I cannot answer that question, but so far for me it's been great. Not so great. Excuse me, I burped. Not so great for the other blacks that I have come across, but for me it's been okay. It's been okay. So there we go.
Okay. All right.
If they listen to the show, you're gonna lose your job. I want you to know that. I'm just messing with you.
And let me tell you something. My stepmother is a black woman who looks white. Okay, they thought that she was white, but when she was going to these meetings and they were saying that calling certain people the N words and things of this nature, and when she stood up and said, "Excuse me, I'm black. I just look white, but I'm black," they said, "Oh my God!" They came after her and tried to shut her down. Okay, but she says, "You're not going to do that to me because my father taught me about the good old boys." So she wound up winning, and so her company is still standing today. So I ain't getting fired worth nothing because I'm up under a black woman that is not going to take no racism from anybody, okay? So I'm just like, woo, all right. So I'm cool. But I understand where you're coming from, though. Bye-bye.
All right. We appreciate you, Eric, man. Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate you.
No doubt. Call-in number, yo. What's the call-in number?
Call-in number is area code 516-418-5903. If you want to get your comment or concern, if you think that we are being racist, if you think that we are causing division, please call in. We would love to hear from you. We won't bite your head off if you disagree with us. I mean, it's okay to disagree with us. We always say we don't have all the answers. We never claim to. So if you disagree with us, that is perfectly fine. Call in and voice the disagreements. We are not the government. We will not censor you. We will not shut you down. Okay? Call in, 516-418-5903.
Can you press like on a live comment?
Oh.
Yeah. And press 1 if you do call, so we can see that it's you. All right.
If there's not a comment, can I make a point? Mention something that Eric. So Eric was talking about this book by Joy DeGroot called what's the name of the book? I got the book right here.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Looking right at the book. So that book deals with the psychological effects that I was talking about earlier. Now, just to make a point about that, right? When she came out with that book, and she put forth this thesis that the trauma of slavery was passed on, and that black people are still suffering from the trauma, and she laid her case out. People said, "Oh, she was crazy," and this is nonsense, And people still say this today. They say, "Well, you didn't grow up in slavery, so what are you talking about?" And even in discussions about about reparations, and people are on different sides of the argument about reparations, about whether reparations are warranted. But the argument is made, well, you didn't grow up a slave, so how are you do reparations? Well, a study came out. This was not very long ago. It was a recent study. It was it showed that the Holocaust survivors, they showed that the trauma passed on to their children's genes. You can look this up right now. You Google like Holocaust survivors trauma, and when this came out, it was a totally different reaction. It's believable. That oh yeah, this could have happened to the Jews. But when you talk about trauma being passed on to black men, that's a whole another subject to even discuss about this. But the notion that black people could somehow be suffering from trauma from slavery and from Jim Crow and some of these other systems of oppression, that's total nonsense. So you can see right there, there's still this same double standard that, even in science, things can be true for other people, but when it comes to black people, some skepticism. We don't know if we believe that.
Slavery, that's in the past. That happened. Forget about it. Why are you talking about that? 911, never forget. Come on, man. I'm pretty sure y'all see
They won't ever say that to a Jew. Never forget the Holocaust. Even Germany. Germany itself recognizes the Holocaust and the horrors that went on. America? Huh?
John, you had some stuff you want to talk about?
I do. So I think, who was it? I think it was actually they talked about, J-Mac talked about Peter and Paul. So remember when Peter refused to eat with the Gentile believers, and Paul confronted him? So I wonder if these white people today would confront Paul and say, Paul, you shouldn't be saying that. That ain't what's going on. Because he definitely did that.
John, you got to give a little backstory, bro, because you confusing, your story is kind of incomplete. Give a little backstory.
So after the ascension, Paul, they had the Old Testament where the Jews were not allowed to even, really be in the house of a Gentile. So when they became Christians, when Peter was eating, or he was around Gentile believers, and he being a Jewish believer, what happened was they were all eating together. But then when these Judaizers came in, these law keepers came in, saying that you shouldn't be eating with these people, Peter stopped eating with them. Or should I say Cephas? Stopped eating with them. And so Paul confronted Peter about that. But when you have today, you have white people who say that we shouldn't be doing things like that, like what Paul did, confronted Peter, addressing issues that have to deal with people's identity. Because if you look in the New Testament, you see there's this distinction between the Jewish believers and the Gentile believers. That distinction is made. But people want to ignore that. That clear it up a little bit more?
Kinda.
Okay.
I'm trying to make
what
the
about
distinction from the modern time. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So white people are who in this story? They're the Judaizers?
Say it again.
Hello? Are you saying that the white people are the Judaizers? Who are the white people in this story? The white
what
people
I'm saying is
don't say that.
Right, because here today, when we bring up racial issues, you hear the stuff that come back to us that talk about it's a sin problem, not a skin problem.
All right.
The white people are people who are saying.
So we're Peter. So we're Peter.
No.
Or we're Paul in this situation. We're Paul.
Yeah, we're Paul.
Bringing up the issue.
Confronting Peter for his racial issues, and people saying that we shouldn't be confronting racial issues.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying.
Just forget it. Move on.
But on this issue of the skin problem, right? One of the things that's done when you have a discussion about race is that, and sadly, mostly white people. I hate to sound like we're beating up white people, but I mean, we have to deal with things as they are. But most often, when you're in a discussion about race, they will reduce something down to the skin color. And so, just like this statement you just made about it's not a sin problem, it's a skin problem. But this is important to understand when we talk about black. Black is not a skin color. Not primarily. It's not. When we talk about black, what we're talking about primarily. We're talking about an ethnicity. We're talking about a culture. When we talk about it, so we talk about there's an African American culture, and then there's a culture, but we're also talking about a history. So black or African descendant people in America, we have a distinct history in this country that shapes helps to forms our culture and helps to shape our existence and our understanding about our worldview and a whole lot of things. And people don't want to deal with that history, so that's why they try to focus it on just skin color. It's not as well, because if you just focus on the skin color, if you just focus on, this notion of I don't see color or we both bleed red, well, we're not talking. That's a way to not have to deal with the historical legacy. So don't just make me just a pigmentation. Don't make me when you talk about me as being black, or when you talk about black, we need to talk about the history. We need to talk about everything. So, and I know when I talk with people, I don't let them get away with that, with just framing the issue as just the color.
Right. Because, Kev, and to that point, we have to also get away from the fact that it's just us here in America. We can't forget about our Puerto Rican brothers and sisters who are black. We can't forget about our Haitians, the West Indies. We can't forget about the Dominicans. We can't forget about these Caribbean people. Like I was looking at a picture, and it's just a picture of, it was like 7 or 8 different black women, and it said you have a Haitian here, you have an African American, you have a Puerto Rican, and it was like the only difference between these women was a boat stop. A boat stop. Yep. That's the only difference. So, when you look at Puerto Ricans or you look at them, or the Cubans, and you say, well, I'm Puerto Rican, or I'm this, or I'm that. We don't look at them as being black, but they are black. I'm speaking generally here, because you have a lot of people, well, they Puerto Rican, or he's this, or he's that, or she's this, he's that. They still black. Not every Puerto Rican is black, but you have a lot of Puerto Ricans who are African descended. And we have to take that into consideration as well, because I think a lot of times we overlook the whole black collective.
Right.
And we overlook that a lot of times. And, we're talking about being black, not just the skin color. You can't, not just the tone of pigment is my skin. It's the history. That's right. And it's the boat stop that makes the difference.
Right. And when you think about the culture of New York and hip hop and where that came from, it was blacks and Puerto Ricans. They shared the same culture, the hip hop culture, which is as a subculture of black culture, which is a subculture of American culture. But somehow black culture is offensive to white culture.
Wow. Colorblind Christians, I tell you.
I'm gonna bring up something else too. So I wanted to talk about this reverse racism thing. I want to get you guys' perspective on that. When you hear that term reverse racism, what do you think of, or what comes to mind?
Laughing.
You said laughing?
Yes.
Explain.
Why? Why do you laugh?
Because it's because it's preposterous. So this brings up another issue of what racism actually is, and going back to what I was saying earlier about one of the psychological conditioning and the ways that it still manifests in society, right? And one of those holdovers from is that whatever white person says, that's the way it is, right? So this idea that white people get to define what things mean. They define what the history is. So this is a holdover from slavery, holdover from white supremacy. So when we talk about reverse racism, so now today and there's a lot of pushback now. You notice that when, and again, as I said, when black people assert themselves in different ways, there's always it's perceived as dangerous, and that they will push back. And so they're pushing back because there's been a lot of discussion in the past few years, really since Trayvon got killed. This term white privilege has come up a lot, and they don't like that, and they have rebelled against this white privilege idea, and now the new thing is to call black people racist. To say that black people are more racist now than white people ever were, and so this term. So when they come up with this term reverse racism, that's them attempting to redefine what racism means. Racism is it has to do it has always meant one thing primarily. It's not just this idea of not liking people because of their skin color. That's what they reduce it to. So to them, that's what they say. Racism involves the exercise of power and control over and domination over a group of people through psychological terror, through force of law, through manipulation, certain methods. So you have to have the ability and the capacity to dominate and over people. So to say that just because I call a white person a honky, or that's reverse racism, or because I call a white person a name, that's reverse racism. That's not what racism is. But that's what they know what racism is. White people know what racism is. But what they want to do is they want to, again, this is just part of reinventing terms, redefining terms. What the brother said they call about the gaslighting. That's what that is. And that's my opinion. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and so I always pose this question to people who bring that up. They say, you black racists, and they call the Black Panthers black racists when all they was doing is stand up to protect the community from the actual racists. I always pose this question. If you, and this is before I even listened to Dr. Joy Legree, however you say her name, I always knew this, but if you can, we talk about white racists, how does white racism adversely affect black people as a whole? Can we see that? So let's talk about black racism. How has black racism adversely affected white people as a whole? And you know what I get when I ask that question?
What? Crickets.
just what you just heard. Nothing. Because it can't. Black racism does not affect white people adversely. I could be mad and say, you know, I hate white people, even though I don't. I could say all this stuff. I could say white people are trash and this, that, and the other. But you know what? It has no effect on them as a group. None. But adversely, white racism can affect us, and when it comes to getting a job, just your name. I got a pretty white name, and I'm not saying it's pretty. I'm just saying it's a white name. John Bolton. That's a white name. That's the ambassador. He was the former ambassador to the UN. Same name. Okay? Pretty white name. But if my name is Shaquanda or Shaniqua or Raheem, if I put an application in to a job and I have the exact same qualifications as a white person, guess who's going to get the call back? The person with the white-sounding name. That's racism.
Been proven over and over again.
Over and over.
It is.
Mm-hmm. John,
but people don't see that.
Talk about.
Yes, sir.
Talk about, because I know you know, I don't know, everybody on here has probably heard of Steve Lumley and his show. You know, the show that he had on for a while. He used to do his little radio broadcast on Friday night. And Steve was pretty good. But he still was an average white man when it comes to race. John, and I think Elgin as well, actually came on one of Steve's shows to talk about race in America. You can find that show. I don't know if you get it on YouTube or whatever, but if you go to Steve's website, apostacywatch.com, I'm pretty sure it's still there. Race in America, I think. And Steve
race and faith in America.
Clueless to the plight of black men. And it was amazing. And he had a lot of racist people on his post, so they still on there. But it was just amazing to see not really amazing. I mean, it's like, you know, when you're surprised but not really surprised at the cluelessness of Steve Lumley when it came to black people. But if you've never been around black people, you never had to deal with them on a daily basis. I'm not talking about interacting over the internet. I'm talking about dealing with them, living with them, working with them, you know, and talking to them. Then you don't know. So talk about that and how you felt on that show. Were you trying to defend the black race? Were you trying to educate Steve? What was going through your mind as you were on that show with him?
Well, he reached out to me and asked me to do that show. I think this was around the time Trayvon came on. And this part where I was really just beginning to wake up and see. I mean, I always knew and I always had the feeling of, you know, racism. I knew it existed, and I was always there.
It was Mike Brown.
But to actually,
it was Mike Brown.
Huh? It was Mike Brown.
Mike
yeah,
Brown.
It was about Mike Brown when he got killed. But it was always there, but I was not really had studied up on it and did some research, and I was not fully educated at the time when we had this show, but I was still able to, you know, prove my point. But say how I felt, I was a little nervous doing the show, and I thank God that Elgin was there, and he chimed in and helped me out with some points because it always went back to the Bible and to that sin problem, not a skin problem thing. And so one of the things that we brought up was being pulled over by the cops, right? And you know, I talked about when we get pulled over by the cops, like we have to be extra cautious and extra aware, you know, and this, that, and other. He said, well, I present to you, well, that, you know, I get pulled over by a cop and he's a jerk to me, then, you know, it's just he's a jerk to me. I get pulled over by jerk cops too. And then the point that I brought out was whether it's getting pulled over by a cop or getting bad service at a restaurant, if that waiter or that cop are white, you know 100% that it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. But as a black guy, I don't know if it's because that guy's just a jerk or if it's because he don't like me because of the color of my skin. And that is the privilege that you have as a white person, that you don't have to ever worry or even consider that fact. And I brought up the fact that when we talk about white privilege, and I'll talk about the able-bodied person versus a handicapped person. If I'm a handicapped person, I'm in a wheelchair, and I'm trying to get a job, And thanks to people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who fought for the civil rights of people, even including the handicapped, people like that, to get these things on the books. If I'm going to a job interview, the thing that comes to my mind when I get up in the morning is, I've never been to this place before, so are they going to have a wheelchair ramp for me? What if they don't have a wheelchair ramp? What if there's a bunch of stairs and there's no elevators and the elevator's broke? How am I going to get these things that able-bodied people never, ever, ever have to think about? Never. And everybody on this panel is an able-bodied person. Nobody on this panel is handicapped. I have a daughter who has cerebral palsy. So there's some things that I know that I never have to think about that she has to think about. But and it's things like that that shows the white privilege, not this privilege, and it's not just white privilege, but acknowledging that privilege. I acknowledge my male privilege. I acknowledge the fact that I forever, unless I'm going to have to think about being raped. If I'm leaving the dark, like leaving my office late at night or whatever, my worries about is, some dudes trying to come jump me, that's my worry. I ain't worried about getting raped. But a woman, she has to think about that. That's my message. But I acknowledge that. But white people will never acknowledge the privilege that they have.
They think white privilege is getting special favors and getting discounts at the store. That's what they think white privilege is.
Right. Go ahead, Kevin. And when you talk about white privilege, they think they always think that white privilege is just, well, I grew up poor. I had to struggle for everything I got. White privilege ain't about money. It's about opportunity. Because if you're a poor white person growing up in an all-black neighborhood and you go to a school that's ran by white administration and mostly white teachers and white counselors, that white person is going to look out for you. That white person may put you in an advanced class, but people like me, I'm not getting an advanced class. I'm getting suspended for 3 days for bringing a fingernail clipper to school. You can punch somebody in the eye and you only get, putting time out. That's white privilege. It ain't got nothing to do with how much money you make. I'm saying if poor white people, I heard D.L. Hughley say this, and I ain't taking credit for this, but it was kind of funny when I heard it. He said that some of you poor white people who voted for Trump, he said, you wasting your white privilege. He said, give it to me. Let me use it. At least Kevin got it.
I got it.
But
Kevin,
I'm done.
yeah, something else.
I'm done.
But you brought up Steve Lumley, and I engage him from time to time on Facebook, and I don't think I listen to his show. I'm aware of his blog, and the interactions I've had with him, he seems like a pretty. You use the term kind of clueless to describe him on as far as the conversation, but he's not the type of person that I would block on Facebook. I mean, I've been able to engage him on a certain level of reasonableness, on some of these subjects, right? At least that's been my experience. But one thing you have to keep in mind when you're talking to maybe, and I don't know necessarily if Steve Lumley, but or just I'm referencing Steve Lumley because he's a Christian, and he may have occasion to hear a Vodi Bakum, right? What a Vodi Bakum may have to say on the subject, and I'm mentioning this because again, one of these holdovers from slavery that we have to contend with, the holdover from slavery, Jim Crow, is that a white person, in power, or just a white person in general, if they find a black person that will validate their agenda, or that will say what they want them to say, or agrees with them, then they will take that black person and offer that black person up as validation of their
viewpoint. So we have seen this happen, time and time again throughout history. And we have different names for this type of black person, and I'm not suggesting
brown polar bear.
I'm not suggesting that Vodi Bakum or that even people should be called this name, some of these names, but you all are familiar with some of these names I'm talking about. But so some of these people are used willingly, and some are used unwillingly. But if they will find, so Vodi Bakum, his viewpoints serve this purpose a lot. Walter Williams, I think he's an economist.
Jason Whitlock.
He used to sit in for Rush Limbaugh, Jason Whitlock. So when you're having a conversation with a white person on an issue, involving race or history involving black people, they're going to, without fail, they're going to refer to one of these black people and say, well, such and such said, and they will use that person as, they will rely on that person as, that's just it, so now so they're going to pitch you against Jason Whitlock, or they're going to pitch you against Vodi Bakum, or so you're not arguing with them. You're not arguing with you're not having a discussion with the person you're talking to. Now you're pitted against another black person. So we can't fall for that either. And so we have to be kind of be prepared to deal with that when we have discussions with people. I don't let people get away with that. So
you're talking about Steve.
Well, I don't know if Steve has done this or not. I just kind of brought his name up. Now, in some conversations I've had with him, like on Facebook, he may have referenced, or maybe some people on his Facebook. And if Steve, you're listening, if I got you wrong, then I apologize. But but I've had this experience with many white Christian brothers, sisters, whatever. When we're having a discussion about an issue involving race, whether it be race in politics or race in religion, they're going to bring up one of these people of what they said, as if that one black person who just happens to agree with them, is the authority on the subject.
You mean like some who shall not be named?
Yeah, exactly. and some of these black people enjoy being in these positions, like he who shall not be named, and a few of these other people. They enjoy being, because they receive attention. I think somebody might have talked about this early in the show. It brings them favor. It helps them get a show. It helps them get a speaking engagement. It helps them sell books. And they're perfectly happy serving in that role. So if you want to be a black person who is a conservative, whether you're a conservative Christian or a conservative, political person, or of any stripe. Don't allow yourself to be used. I'm talking to black people. You should not allow yourself to be used like that.
Right.
And the perfect example of what you're talking about is Charles Albert Johnson, because he's a black conservative, but he does not allow himself to be used by white supremacy.
Right. Even though he gets on my nerves daily, we be duking it out, boy. When on certain issues, he takes a stand. He takes a stand. So yeah, he would be
he loves Trump.
He would be a decent example. Yeah. That was a good show, by the way.
But white supremacy he won't let white supremacy use him.
Right.
Well. Yeah, I guess not.
So?
I guess not willingly. Yeah, not willingly. He still being
when
used.
It comes to social injustice, not Trump.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because
we leave Trump
social
out.
injustice. Yeah. barring Trump because he loves Trump, but social injustice. And I wanted to ask him about Trump too when we had him on the air, but the show was just so good.
Yeah, we had him on a couple weeks ago. It was a great show.
Yeah, it was a good show.
My man Charles, younger than you think too. I don't even think he's 40 years old yet. He's in his mid-30s.
He's not.
But anyway,
he's not 40.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Real Talk Radio. We really, really appreciate you taking this time out to listen to us today. I know this is not our usual talk and stuff we usually talk about, but we do talk about these things, and I think they are important to talk about. And not everybody's going to like this show. Not everybody's going to agree with it. I'm pretty sure we're going to get some angry comments on YouTube about it. May get some angry comments on Facebook, but, I mean, that comes with the territory. We don't expect everybody to agree with everything we say, and that's cool with us. Don't forget, check out the website. Follow the website, www.forrealtalkradio.com. You can get all of our social media there. Especially go to our YouTube page because that's where you'll find all of our past shows. So even if, like the brother called who couldn't find us because we changed numbers now in conjunction with BEC Media, you can always find us on YouTube. So go to the website and get us there. Kevin, we thank you for calling. We thank all the callers for calling in today. We appreciate all you guys' input. We love you guys. Don't forget to share, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We love you guys, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. On that note, we out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Real Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.forrealtalkradio.com for updates on all of our social media platforms, like our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Feel free to send us your comments, questions, or criticisms. If this show or any of our past shows have helped you in any way, please feel free to share it with your friends and family. See you next time.